Hello, guys. My name is Daniela Rueda, and I'm going to talk to you about one of the most important art movements in modern history, which is Impressionism. So, what is Impressionism? It is an art movement that started in France in the middle of the 19th century, and instead of painting perfect detailed scenes, like for example the realism, Impressionists decided to focus on different key features. Some of them are bright, bright colors, visible brushstrokes, always painting the outdoor scenes, everyday subjects like parks, cafes, the weather, fleeting moments, and just happy casual vibes. But how did it come to this and why? Well, we need to know a bit about the historical context, which is that Impressionism happens after the Industrial Revolutions in cities like Paris that are modernized rapidly, and this provokes that there are new materials, like, for example, painting in tubes and the creation of synthetic colors. Also, there are new landscapes like factories, railroads, and trains. Another key factor is the Franco-Prussian War that left France politically unstable, but also full the desire for joy and escape in art. And another key factor was that the French Art Academy decided who participated in exhibitions and who didn't, meaning like who was considered an artist and who wasn't. And in this sense, a lot of artists, tired of being ignored, decided to band together and organize their own exhibition, which happened in 1874 and was called the first Impressionist exhibition, the first of eight actually. This was, as I said, an exhibition made by rejected artists. Participated more than 30 artists. Some of them are Paul Cézanne, Edgar Degas, Leopold Lebert, Auguste Demolin, Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Alfred Sisley. And the reception was not good. Much of it was critics toward the artist and the paintings because they gave a feeling of being uncompleted. And yeah, it was criticized a lot. And one of the critics, um, sorry, even it was so criticized that even one of the artists created this sketch that I'm showing you, which has the legend Impressionist painting, a revolution in painting that begins with terror. To that level was of disgust with the Impressionist. But as I was telling you, one of the critics who assisted the exhibit was Louis Leroy, and the story tells us that when he looked at this painting of Claude Monet, which is Impression of the Sun, he was so angry and so disgusted that he wrote in the newspaper a critic, and that critic is that the impression I was certain of, I was just telling myself that since I was impressed, there had to be some impression in it. And what freedom, what ease of workmanship! A preliminary drawing for a wallpaper pattern is more finished than this seascape, meaning that it was an incomplete um, painting and it wasn't worth showing it. He really hated. And although he wrote this, the artist Claude Monet and a lot of his partners They decided to take those words and take pride in it and adopted the name the Impressionist. And well, who were the Impressionists? I'm going to talk to you about three of them, three of the most important Impressionists. First, of course, Claude Monet, then Camille Pissarro, and Pierre-Auguste Renoir. First, Claude Monet. He is considered one of the most important founders of Impressionism, and some of the key features that make him stand out are that Monet always painted the same subject over and over again. For example, the Water Lilies is a series of 250 oil paintings which he painted throughout the day, morning, evening, night, whether it was raining or the sun was shining. He always wanted to capture that color and that essence of life. Also, he always painted the outdoors, and also he never used the color black. If you see, for example, in the artist garden at Giverny, which was his home, he never used the color black, even in the shadows of the tree or in any other painting. Even in Woman with Parasol, where there is a clear contrast between the light and the shadows, he never used that color. Um, right, as I was telling you, the series of water lilies, um, he dedicated the last 30 years of his life to creating this series. And they depict his flower garden and the pond at his house in Giverny. And throughout this series, we can see how he began to lose his color perception since he was diagnosed with cataracts from 1913 onwards, and his painting began to be even blurry, less sharp, and they also use less color. And it wasn't until 1923, 10 years later, that he went under surgery for his cataracts and he began to see better and create painting with more color, and also began using bigger and bigger canvases. I think some of the latest paintings are more than 2 meters wide. That's how big he started using the canvases. And well, Claude Monet died of lung cancer in 1926 at the age of 86 at his home in Giverny, and his house actually was given to the French Academy of Fine Arts, and nowadays it is a museum and a tourist attraction in Giverny. And the next one is Camille Pissarro. And Camille Pissarro was born in Saint Thomas in the 1830s. And something that made him stand out was that he was the only artist that exhibit his paintings in all 8 exhibitions of Impressionism, the Impressionist exhibitions. Another thing that makes him stand out is that instead of using long strokes, he used small ones and very precise. For example, in the late afternoon or middle, you can see that it's almost like pointillism in the trees, the sky, the the grass. It's very, very precise. And he also created this series of paintings that about the boulevard in Montmartre that depicted the same view at different times of the year. For example, here we can see an afternoon in spring but also at night. He also portrayed with snow, with rain, with fog, mist, you know, every kind of weather. And he really tried to explore that color composition and the contrast between each each season of the year. Next one we have Pierre Auguste Renoir. He was born in 1841. He was also a French artist. He was one of the leading painters of the Impressionist group, but he is a bit different. And you can see here that um, Pissarro and Monet tried to always paint the outdoors, but Renoir focused on people. Actually, he was considered a humanist. He was joyful. He wanted to celebrate the beauty and charm and pleasures of life and to spend time with friends. He enjoyed painting portraits, and these three paintings are example of that. He wanted to portray the Parisian lifestyle and yeah, also that craving that people in France had after the war. That craving for joy and humanity and normality. And well, he used bold combinations of complementary colors that we can see, for example, in Near the Lake, the blues and the greens, the purples in the shadows, the reds in the cheeks of that man. And also for this painting, Luncheon at the Voting Party, it was it was regarded as the best painting in the seventh Expressionist exhibition in 1982 by three critics. And I agree, it is really good. It is really impressive the use of anatomy, of colors, of the sentiment that the painting gives you. And well, now I want to tell you about some of my favorite paintings in the Impressionist era. I'm going to talk to you about the Ballerina series, which is a series of painting of more than 200 paintings made by Edgar Degas, which was a French painter that lived from 1834 to 1917. Sorry, from 1917. And he developed this series throughout most of his life. And the main media he used was pastel, gouache, charcoal, and chalk. And I really like this series of paintings because we tend to think of ballerinas and ballet as this glamorous activity that rich people do, but Edgar Degas really portrayed the behind the scenes of ballet. He showed us the ballerinas when stretching, when crying, while washing themselves, being stressed, exhausted, even boring. And it showed that really raw side of ballets. And to me, they look very human and very realist. And although Edgar Degas didn't want the title of Impressionist, he's considered one of the founders of Impressionism still. And well, as a form of conclusion, I just want to say that Impressionism is one of the biggest movements in art history because they killed the myth of the perfect painting. They were rebellious and they decided to create their own style, and that inspired other movements like Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, and even abstract art. I think um, Impressionism just wasn't a new style. It was a whole revolution that rewrote the rules of art and how we see reality. And well, that has been all. I hope you learned something new. And thank you for watching.